NASA has the rocket. It rolled out of the factory 10 days after Artemis 2 splashed down in the Pacific. They have the launch date, mid-2027. They have the crew vehicle, the spacesuit, the landers, the plan. What they do not have is the one thing the entire mission depends on. And without it, Artemis 3 does not leave the ground. The real reason Artemis 3 might not launch in 2027 is not funding. It is not political will. It is not the rocket. It is a single technical demonstration that has never been performed in the history of human spaceflight. And as of April 2026, it still has not happened. You need to understand why.
On February 27, 2026, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman stood in front of cameras and changed the plan. Artemis 3, the mission the world expected to return humans to the moon for the first time in 53 years, would not land. Instead, it would stay in Earth orbit, rendezvous with a lander, test the docking, prove every system before any of it goes near the moon. His words? Get back to basics. It sounded like a retreat. It was not. It was an engineer looking at an honest checklist and deciding that nothing gets skipped. The Apollo program did this in March 1969. They flew Apollo 9, no moon, Earth orbit only, and tested the lunar module for the first time in space. 4 months later, Apollo 11 landed. Artemis 3 is Apollo 9. And like Apollo 9, the thing it is testing is the thing that could kill you if it fails. To reach the moon, the Starship human landing system has to leave Earth orbit. To leave Earth orbit, it has to be full. It does not launch full. Here is what happens instead. Starship HLS launches empty from Boca Chica, Texas. It reaches orbit, it waits. Then a tanker Starship launches. It climbs to orbit. It finds the HLS. The two vehicles dock, side by side, belly to belly, in a connection that has never been made between two spacecraft in the history of spaceflight. Through that connection, liquid methane flows at negative 162 degrees Celsius. Liquid oxygen flows at negative 183 degrees Celsius. In perfect vacuum, in microgravity, at 27,000 kilometers per hour. The tanker undocks, falls back to Earth, and then the count begins. Because one tanker is not enough. NASA's own Inspector General says the number is more than 10. Some analyses put it at 15 or higher. The exact figure depends on the mission profile and the margins SpaceX can achieve on each transfer. The floor is 10. The ceiling is not confirmed. 10 or more Starship flights. Each one has to climb to the same orbit, dock with the HLS, transfer cryogenic propellant, undock cleanly. Every time. 0 failures allowed. 1 bad docking, 1 faulty seal, 1 transfer that fails mid-operation, and the lander does not have enough fuel to reach the moon. That is not a setback. That is a mission-ending event before a single crew member has left Earth orbit. NASA's certification of the full refueling architecture cannot be completed until the propellant transfer demonstration succeeds. As of early 2026, that demonstration remains unflown. Cryogenic propellant transfer in orbit has never been done. Not by NASA, not by Roscosmos, not by ESA, not by any space agency in history. The physics alone is a new problem. On Earth, liquid oxygen and liquid methane pool at the bottom of a tank. Gravity does the work. In orbit, gravity is gone. The propellant floats. It coats the inside of the tank in sheets. It forms bubbles at the outlet. It moves unpredictably depending on the rotation of the vehicle, the firing of the thrusters, the temperature of the tank walls. To move it toward the outlet, toward the transfer pipe. You fire small thrusters to accelerate the vehicle slightly. The propellant is pushed to the back of the tank by inertia. That process is called propellant settling. It costs fuel you cannot recover. The thermal challenge is equal. Cryogenic propellants absorb heat from sunlight and from the vehicle itself. They begin to boil off during every orbit spent waiting. Managing that boil off, keeping propellant cold enough to transfer across 10, 12, 15 separate tanker visits is a problem that has been studied for decades and never tested at scale.
SpaceX planned to complete the propellant transfer demonstration in 2025. That target slipped into 2026. As of March 2026, the demonstration had not occurred. Starship IFT-12, the 12th integrated flight test, the debut of the version 3 hardware with Raptor 3 engines, is now targeting May 2026. An FAA investigation following an incident at Starbase in early April is a hard regulatory gate before any launch is permitted. And that flight is a test of the new rocket configuration, not of propellant transfer. The transfer test comes after. The mission is roughly 14 months away. The clock is not paused.
Hold this number. 15. 15 tanker launches. In sequence, in orbit. 0 failures permitted. Every single one of those flights has to succeed. And not one of them has been attempted yet.
While SpaceX works toward that transfer demonstration, Blue Origin is moving on a different path entirely. Blue Moon, the lander Blue Origin calls Endurance, requires fewer refueling events than Starship's architecture. Where SpaceX needs more than 10 tanker flights to fill a single lander, Blue Origin's approach involves orbital depot operations with a smaller number of transfer stages. It is not simple, but the scale of the cryogenic problem is different in kind. A Pathfinder cargo mission to the moon was planned. A successful landing there would prove the engine, the guidance system, and the landing architecture before any astronaut ever steps inside.
As of April 2026, New Glenn, the rocket Blue Origin depends on to build toward that demonstration, is grounded. On April 19th, an upper stage engine failure placed a commercial satellite in an orbit too low to sustain. The satellite burned up in Earth's atmosphere. The FAA has opened an investigation. Return to flight requires agency approval of Blue Origin's findings and any corrective actions. The timeline is open.
NASA's rule is direct. Whichever lander is certified goes. If both are ready, both dock on the same mission. That has never happened. As of April 2026, NASA has not finalized the Artemis 3 orbital profile, whether the mission targets low Earth orbit or high Earth orbit, or confirmed whether it will dock with one lander or both. The test configuration is still open. That uncertainty is itself a schedule pressure. Neither lander has yet docked with Orion. Neither has proven any of that in space.
That is what Artemis 3 is built to test. 2 crew members cross from Orion into the lander. They power up propulsion, life support, communications. If anything fails, Earth is 400 kilometers below them. Recovery takes hours. At the moon, Earth is 400,000 kilometers away. If anything fails there, recovery does not happen. The difference between Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 is exactly that difference. Every test that happens in orbit is a test that does not have to happen on the lunar surface.
Here is the fact that changes the way you see everything you have just heard.
As of April 2026, the same month Artemis 2 returned to Earth, SpaceX has not yet transferred cryogenic propellant between 2 spacecraft in orbit. Not in a full-scale demonstration, not in a certified configuration. The campaign to prove it works has not yet reached the milestone NASA requires before it will certify the lander for crewed use. Artemis 3 is roughly 14 months away. In those 14 months, SpaceX must complete the first in-orbit cryogenic propellant transfer campaign in the history of spaceflight.
Pass a NASA critical design review that has already slipped across 2 calendar years. Complete hardware qualification for a vehicle still being tested at the component level. And then demonstrate a docking with Orion in a certified configuration before the crew of Artemis 3 boards their rocket. This is the sequence that stands between the image at the start of this video, Starship HLS in lunar orbit, Earthrise behind it, and the day that image is actually real. Every step in that sequence is a first. Most of them have never been attempted by anyone. All of them have to work, in order, on a roughly 14-month clock with no margin. NASA restructured Artemis 3 not because the agency lost confidence in what it was building. They restructured it because they understood what the cost of failure at the moon would actually be. One catastrophic failure at the lunar South Pole is not a program setback. It is an event that closes human space exploration for a generation. So they made the same decision Apollo's engineers made in 1969. Put the gate before the destination. Make orbit the test. Make Earth the safety net. Only when every system has been proven here do you take it there.
The technology that makes Artemis 4 possible is being built right now, in real time, on a timeline that has no slack. If the transfer campaign succeeds this year, the path to the moon opens. If it slips, Artemis 3 slips, and Artemis 4 slides with it. If you are still watching at this point, you already understand something that did not fit in any headline written about the Artemis 3 redesign. The mission was not downgraded. It was made honest. If the propellant transfer demonstration slips deep into 2027, does Artemis 4's 2028 lunar landing hold, or does the entire moon timeline shift again? Leave your answer below.
Here is what Artemis 3 actually is. It is not the mission that was supposed to land. It is not a consolation. It is the most technically honest thing NASA has committed to in the modern era of human spaceflight. They looked at what the machine required. They looked at what had never been done. And they said, we do the test before we do the mission. Not because the moon got harder, because being wrong at the moon is permanent. The Starship human landing system is in Earth orbit. Orion is alongside it. 2 crew members are inside the lander.
Every cryogenic transfer that had to happen, happened. Every docking that had to work, worked. Every system that had to prove itself in the environment of space, proved itself. That moment, when all of those things are true at the same time, in the same orbit, with humans on board, is what Artemis 3 exists to create. Artemis 4 is the landing. But the crew of Artemis 3, their names not yet announced, their faces not yet on a poster, will spend 2 weeks in Earth orbit proving that the landing is survivable. That is what Artemis 3 asks of them. Not the moon. The proof that the moon does not kill the people who follow.